List on international nuclear issues. Linda, good to have you with us. First of all, just explain for us, why has this 1 million tonnes of radioactively contaminated water accumulated in the first place?
Well, 3 of the 4 cores melted down when the Fukushima nuclear power plants had their catastrophe in March 2011. And that means that they have to be continuously cooled. And so there's cooling water being used every day to keep those melted cores cool so they don't go back into fissioning, for example. And then there's also water running down the hillside, actually really mountains, behind the site and through the site, picking up radioactive contamination. It's running into the basement where the water is also leaking down inside the containment buildings. So there's a huge quantity of water running onto the site every day that's picking up radioactive contamination that has to be dealt with, which is why they're storing it in these tanks.
Yeah, and some of these radioactive isotopes can be filtered, some can't. So what are the environmental risks of simply dumping it all in the Pacific Ocean?
Well, even saying that they're saying that 62 of these isotopes can be filtered. The one that can't be filtered is tritium because it's radioactive hydrogen, so it's basically the equivalent of water itself. But in fact, they found that they haven't successfully filtered out the radioactive isotopes from this water. They've found quite high levels, for example, of strontium in the water. So that's the reason, as you mentioned earlier, that the fishermen in particular are worried about this discharge, because it will contaminate the fish stocks.
If you can't release it into the water, and some scientists are saying, look, if you put it in the ocean, it'll be diluted, it'll be fine. But if you don't do that, you're going to have to put it somewhere, because TEPCO is going to run out of space in a few years. So what are the other options?
Well, some of the other options are really no better. In fact, I think the Japanese government has only ever really looked at the discharge option, although there are options like evaporating it into the atmosphere, which of course puts it in direct contact with the human environment, or injecting it into the ground, which would put it in contact with groundwater, which can become drinking water. So the fact is that when you embark on a nuclear power program, you have waste, whether you have an accident or not, and it's a problem that no one has solved, and therefore TEPCO and the Japanese government are unable to solve this problem as well. There is no good solution. They're going to be forced to look at the least worst solution, which may end up being dumping it into the ocean. But the solution to pollution is not necessarily dilution. These radioactive isotopes biomagnify through the marine food chain, and they can bind to organs. You know, cesium binds to muscle, strontium to bone, and it's getting into the sediment. In fact, you know, they've already found radioactive isotopes in sediment in the ocean from atomic bomb tests. So it's a very serious problem, and dumping this water into the ocean will only compound what's already a problem from the atomic tests.
Worrying stuff, Linda. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Linda Gunter there.